Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone along to my first webinar. This webinar is going to be on the subject of guitar practice, especially with kids, to do with practicing at home with their parents. So I'm just going to pull up the slides. Okay, so should see everything up on the screen now. Okay, the art of guitar practice. Small steps to improve your child's potential. A quick bit about myself. My name is Dave Donoghue. I'm a guitar teacher. I've been doing it for the past around 4 to 5 years. When I was in secondary, I always wanted to be a guitar teacher. And the day came, I looked in the CAO book to see what was in the catalogue for me. I looked under guitar teacher, guitar tutor, and nothing. So I ended up going into software in college. I liked computer games. It seemed like a good choice. But a few years passed, about 5 years, and I ended up waiting there. I didn't really get fully into software. I think it's a great skill to have, just it wasn't for me. And then the day came, I got my degree, and I had a choice. I could either go out and look for a job in this thing that I wasn't that into, or find something else to do. And really, I still hadn't too much of a clue. So I figured the best thing to do would be to wait in college for another 2 years and do a master's. So fast forward on from that again, I began teaching guitar part-time. And while I enjoyed it, it was still a part-time thing. So then after that, I ended up getting the master's, and I ended up looking at a job with my master's. And I went for one interview ever, didn't get it, thankfully. They could totally read off me. I wasn't that into it, and I wasn't really going for the right reasons. So shortly after that, I figured I'm going to go for it. I'm going to aim to put everything I have into guitar teaching. And thankfully, it started off as 1 day a week, and I've built it, and I get to teach 5 days a week. To teach guitar 5 days a week it's a dream come true, really. To wake up every morning and get to talk about guitar, it's what I wanted as a kid. So I'm so grateful to get to do that. So that is me in a nutshell, basically. And I just was getting a lot of questions of parents just about how to practice at home with their child. Do you know when a child is so young? Like I'm calling like 6 years to 12 years, really. Those years can be vital, and it can be even more vital to just know what you can do at home to move them along. So aims of this webinar, things I hope you leave with after watching. I hope you get a clear idea of what could be done at home with your child, or methods to keep them motivated, to encourage them. And if you have any questions whatsoever after this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to write to me on Twitter. My handle is @ddguitar. On Facebook, just search me under Dave Donoghue Guitar, or good old-fashioned email. Just send an email to donoghueguitar@gmail.com. So anything at all, I'd love to hear feedback on what you thought about it, anything you thought that could have been in it, any unanswered questions, anything at all. Thanks very much. Okay, playing versus practice. What is the difference? Just because a child goes to their room with their guitar for, it could be 2 hours. It's what goes on in the 2 hours that determines how they progress on guitar. So I was thinking about what my own definitions were, and then I went Googling as well, because let's face it, Google has all the definitions nowadays. Playing defined. The definition of playing, the best one I found was it's to engage in activity for enjoyment and recreation rather than a serious or practical purpose. Now, there's some buzzwords I take there. Like, I like enjoyment, I like recreation. They're engaged, but it's the outcome of this that playing differs from practice. So it says rather than a serious or a practical purpose. So my notion is that you use practice to get more out of your playing, but practice must take place for your playing to improve and to be enjoyed. The definition of practice then, there was two ones I liked that I took. The first one was to do something regularly or constantly as an ordinary part of your life. Regularly, constantly, ordinary part of your life. Like words like those really, it implies that in time it could become something as regular and as part of a routine as like brushing your teeth or having breakfast, something you do every day. The second definition is to do something again and again in order to become better at it. Again and again. Repetition. Repetition is king. Like, it was Bruce Lee who said he didn't fear the man who knew 10,000 kicks, but he feared the man who practiced, or he didn't fear the man who practiced 10,000 different kicks, but he feared the man who practiced 10,000 kicks once. So with that, how can that apply to your playing? Repeating things over and over again. Just keep doing it until you get there, really. That is a core value. Can practice feel as fun as playing? You see the diagram above? Practice leads to an improvement, which can lead to fun. And that cycle can keep going and going. Like if you don't practice, there won't be major improvement and the guitar can stop becoming fun. And when something stops becoming fun, it becomes a chore. And it just doesn't feel that good anymore. So that's what practice is at the core of that circle for me. Can it become fun? Yes. There's Mr. Bean. Doubt he played guitar, but he looks enthusiastic. I like enthusiasm. It can become fun with the correct approach though. Like the good old practice because you have to. You'll be met with resistance. There are different ways of bringing it up, different reward systems, which we'll cover later. Two of my favorite quotes that I have on my phone, I have them in a place on my phone that I see them regularly, is that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. A lot of the greats, like I saw Muhammad Ali has said it, a lot of other athletes are quoted as saying it, but to me it applies in all areas of life. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. At concerts I've held, perhaps there has been times that someone might come up to me and point out a student and say, God, they're so talented. That kid, they're so talented. It's amazing the talent they have. And there is talent, but nearly every single case that's been said about a child, I know for a fact that child is practicing. They're at home, they're working hard. And that's how you can appear even more talented than you might even be, really. So to me, that is my first quote. The second quote is, don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. Again, don't practice until you get it right. Practice until you can't get it wrong. There was a time in school where I was playing in a concert and I got the job of playing something that we'd say it was a bit outside of my comfort zone, which was great. It's great to get outside your comfort zone. But I made the fatal schoolboy error of practicing it, and I got it right once. And it was a piece like I was in a big Guns N' Roses phase. This was the complete opposite of Guns N' Roses. So the second I got it right once, I gave myself a pat on the back and I said, well done. That's it done now. Just show up to the concert tomorrow and play it. And that was the only one time out of maybe the 40 attempts I took at it, I got it right. And sure enough, the concert day came and I got it wrong. And that was my one chance to get it right. It was in front of a big crowd. It was being recorded on video, and I would have let people down around me that was working together in the group. And I've never forgot that lesson. I take it with me to this day. And that is a vital thing. So even if your child gets something right once, set a number on it. Maybe say, look, we'll aim to get it 5 times right in a row. And that builds really good habits. I have these, as I said, on my phone. Good idea would be to print them out, leave them somewhere where the child can see them regularly. It ends up getting into your head one way or another. Okay, so I'm going to start now from the time of the week when the lesson is taking place. So the lesson is just after finishing. What's next? The first thing to do is to clearly define what is required for the next lesson. Now I'm going to be getting into more detail on each of these points in a moment. Chunk it down into manageable pieces. Even the biggest of tasks can seem easy if there's small little milestones to meet along the way. Determine how long to spend on practice. It can vary again. We'll get into more details soon. Find time in your week to fit in this practice. So like you've defined what you need to do. You've broken it down into manageable pieces. You've set an estimate on how long to spend on the practice. But if it isn't scheduled, a lot of it remains in the head in sort of the land of theory and the land of wishes. Okay, define what is required. So, in the 2 images here, you see 2 people. One person on the left looks like they have there's different routes, like the way there's different routes with your practice. Sometimes having so many options can lead you not to take any option. Like I'd say to the kids sometimes, do you know, if they're in a restaurant and there's a big menu, the bigger the menu, the longer you're going to take to settle on something and take action and decide. On the right, you can see a path, you can see the road going on. There's loads of different stop-offs and it can seem a bit overwhelming. Okay, defining what is required. Like a few things I'm going to mention as an example here are things that come up regularly in the lessons I teach about different tasks I'd leave kids during the week. So it could be a new section in a song to commit to memory. It could be a new speed target. So perhaps they have the song memorized, but it isn't up to full speed yet. There is a good app I'll mention later. It's called a metronome. This can really help with defining what speed your child is playing at. And also it gives you a visual indication of where they need to get. Because when you're set out to set your speed target, if they're not playing as fast as the original song or the original piece, well, unless they reach that speed, there's a lot of blank sort of no man's land in between of wondering how fast are they actually going, or have they made an improvement on the previous week? So the metronome is a vital tool for that. It could be a new technique to implement. Perhaps they do have stuff up to speed and they do have the memory aspect covered. The technique could be a new section in the song, and that could take a week or 2. It all depends on the technique. But again, if your technique isn't rock solid there's no point getting a dodgy technique up to full speed. You're better off nailing the technique first, then work on your speed. Okay, chunking it down. On the right hand side, you'll see a Far Side cartoon. I like these cartoons. Couldn't find any guitar ones today, but I like this one. The reason I have elephants there is because it's like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? A bite at a time. Large creatures. You'd get there eventually. So even the largest of tasks, I would break them down piece by piece. Okay, so how to chunk it down? What sort of elements or what sections can you divide it into? So if it's a piece, it could be bar by bar, or if it was a song, it could be line by line. And the whole thing about chunking it down can be that line by line, there's a lot of repetition in certain songs nowadays. So if they get the first line off that could cover them later on again. So you'll find that chunking it down, it could accelerate after you've learned 3 individual lines. Those lines could be repeated again later on. Now, if anybody would like any handouts of this presentation, just drop me an email. I can represent in diagrams more of what I'm talking about. This bar by bar and line by line, they give a numeric representation of progress. That's vital. Like numbers, anything you can count and accumulate, it gives you a good, steady picture of what's growing and what might be dwindling. So like bar by bar, I could take one song and I could say, look, I'm going to do bar 1 to bar 10 this week. And maybe I'll divide it down and do 2 bars per day. And it'll all add up, rather than be faced with the mountain of, oh, I have 10 bars to practice. And that I do a lot of that in lessons, breaking things down. Just putting it in common terms, break it down that it seems too easy. And then take action and see the growth. The fretboard hand. I call this the fretboard hand. I made the decision to call it that because I was going to call it the left hand. But in case there's any lefties listening in, it's not always that way. So your fretboard hand, for anybody wondering and that doesn't know, it'll be your hand, the child's hand that is the closest to the neck. It's the one that makes the chords or makes the, how do you say it, the riffs or plays the notes. So perhaps if there's a piece going on, like if a child is having a bit of difficulty with their fretboard hand and the strumming or the picking hand, that's 2 things to take care of. And throw technique, the notes, throw the speed, like all these factors, it can overwhelm a child fairly handy. So sometimes I break down practice and say, you know, work on your fretboard hand on the first 2 days, and then on the next 2 days, work your strumming and picking hand. And then maybe on the 5th day, combine both and see how it goes. It starts to break it down. There are some other categories, like I talked about techniques already. I've discussed, well, notes really, if you're memorizing a passage of notes, you could be memorizing how to make chords. You could be memorizing new chord shapes. You could be memorizing, or not even memorizing, you could be working on changing between the chords. So there's so many different categories, but as I said, like I do chunk down in lessons, but it is a skill worth learning, even as a parent at home. Like, start out and you'll see pretty quickly what works, what can be too much, what can be too little. And it's a great skill to develop. Okay, how long does it take to practice? There are a few factors to this. The difficulty of the piece or the concept being taught. Like there was one piece I learned, it was in TY actually, and it was a piece, I started it in second year in secondary, and it took me 3 years to build it up to speed. I had the notes, I had the technique, it was all about the speed for about 2 years of it. It's called Too Many Notes, if anyone wants to check it out. You'll see why it took a while. This one for me is the #1 factor in determining how long a kid may want to take to practice, or depending on what's at the end of the road, like a deadline. Lately, some students set grades. Like you throw in having to sit in front of an examiner who's going to maybe mark you down on things that you know you could have worked harder on. Like that, I saw a lot of people put in so much practice for that. It all paid off. Every bit of practice does pay off. And the other one is performance, like concerts, or even school concerts, not even concerts with your teacher. Once you're in front of a crowd playing those chords and the stage lights are on you, that can really get you into gear. And if you're in a group as well, like if you can see the other kids are working on theirs and they're moving along, you will want to join in with them. So those two alone to me, those I've seen the most rapid progress with. Time management. I'll be talking a bit more about time management later, but really, like, nowadays there's so many activities to do. Like when I was a kid, it was you did football, soccer, or you did music. And nowadays, like, it's great there's so many activities, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I notice the odd time now, if a child, I might broach, maybe we could practice more, and they'll give me their week, and it is busy and it is great to be at all those things, but it's all about, I think, finding where is the 10 minutes per day, where's that 10 minutes where they could be just sitting on the couch waiting after school to wait for dinner, or there is 10 minutes somewhere, and it's about spotting it. So we'll be talking more about that. Focus, like I was saying earlier, like 5 hours spent in a room playing guitar, if it's not a focused 5 hours, maybe 20 minutes can be as effective. So once you do get them sitting down with the guitar, how to get them to focus. Finding time in your week. Write it down. Write down what it is that's going to be practiced this week. Like, studies have shown that when you write something down, like a goal or something, you're so much more likely to accomplish it than it just being in your head or something you may say, must practice this week. But having it written down and put it somewhere visible, on the fridge, near the door. If you are looking for more time and it's a really hectic schedule, even if the child could get up 10 minutes earlier, I found that works really well. They're getting up and they'll start their day on a good note. And like I was saying earlier, to make it into, like I was saying, the definition of practice, for it to be a regular part of someone's life, if practice was put next to, we'd say, them having breakfast, or after breakfast, they do 10 minutes, then they go brush their teeth, it's starting to fit in between those regular routine items. And after a while, it'll become subconscious. They'll just do it. And they'll still see the results, and it won't feel like a chore. Ad breaks. For anybody who doesn't have Sky Plus or the RTE player and things like that, I've found that, like, there was one day I said to somebody, I was teaching them, and I said, did you have any time to practice this week? And they were like, no, didn't know, not this week. And then I asked, was The Simpsons good yesterday? And they looked and they go, oh, it was brilliant. It was a great episode. So what I was getting at was, I said to them, well, if you're sitting down to watch The Simpsons, and it's good to unwind, or whatever you're watching, there is going to be ad breaks. There'll be an ad break in the middle of the program. There'll be an ad break at the end of the program, before the next program, if you're watching more. Going to get your guitar in the middle of those ad breaks, those can be vital 5-minute chunks that add up to your 20 minutes or your 10 minutes a day, whatever you choose to do. So I'd recommend trying that out. And again, you can take these concepts on board, and I'm not asking everyone to agree with all of them, but all I'd recommend is that you try it for 30 days. Give it a go for 30 days. And if it adds to your life, if it adds to your child's playing life, then it was worth trying. And if it didn't, you know you tried it, and there's more things you can try. Banking up time. If there's a day, or like sometimes someone may go to a different part of the country maybe, or they might go visiting somewhere the same time every 2 weeks or over weekends. If there's weekends you find, well, I definitely won't have time to do the practice, banking up your time. Like start out, we'd say, and do an extra 5 minutes on your Monday, an extra 5 minutes on your Tuesday. Then you've 10 minutes banked up. And if Wednesday is chock-a-block with stuff, that's cool. Give it a break. And then you're back in Thursday again. And collectively, you'll still have the same time done. This seems really obvious, but I studied violin when I was a kid. And the monumental effort in my head to take the violin out of its case. It's only a small instrument and it's only one zip motion, but like I could have practiced more. I think it was left out of its case. It's a delicate instrument. Guitars, luckily, they're not as delicate. So that is a simple recommendation. It does work. Disclaimer, perhaps leave it out of the reach of the younger folk who love to twist the pegs on the guitar. And also, since it's out of its case, if you leave it someplace that's not too hot and too cold, so keep it away from windows and from radiators, it should relatively stay in tune. Okay, motivation. What I want to talk about here, you're going to see a little diagram there, or a little photo tomorrow. A mystical land where 99% of all productivity, motivation, and achievement is stored. I'd often say to students, like, for example, we'd say if I teach somebody on a Monday, and I get them motivated in the lesson. It's so important for them to be self-motivated. They need to motivate themselves during the week since I'm not there. And they leave motivated and they're like, I'm going to practice this week. And I look at them and I go, excellent, good. And I believe them. But then they go home and they're like, well, I had my lesson. And they mightn't practice Monday evening. Tuesday evening comes and they might go, well, I must do that now tomorrow. And again, if it's not written down as a goal or as a to-do, and they're not seeing it on paper, it's not as realistic in their minds. And then Wednesday comes, Thursday, Friday, and then what I call the Sunday nightclub. I call it, or it depends. If your lesson was on a Wednesday, I'd call it the Tuesday nightclub. It's where you take out your instrument and geez, you focus and you give it your all for maybe 20 minutes before your lesson because you know you've the lesson the following day. But what happens there is, first of all, memories of the lesson the previous week are hazy. If you go home that evening and practice, it's going to be in your head. And the muscle memory in the fingers, that's going to be there, it'll be built upon. And the other point about that was to keep score. So when you keep score, you can kind of see how much weeks you've had more effective practice. Keeping score to me is like having a calendar and writing an X on the day when you practice. So it can kind of give you a good idea if there's any specific day that practice doesn't get done or gets forgotten about. Motivation strategies. Find a big enough why. Like a child just being told to practice something, it doesn't do it as well as putting across them why they're practicing, why they need to practice, why they need to spend time on their instrument, why they need to do a certain part of playing as practice. Like if they love playing Smoke on the Water, and I think it's built into every guitarist after a while, they love doing that. But playing Smoke on the Water relentlessly for day after day, playing your scales or learning new chords, those offer you way more options, but you need to put across why they'd want to do that. So some whys I could think of off the top of my head would be like perhaps there's another child or a friend of theirs who's older or even younger if they've been playing longer, and maybe they're in awe of what they can do on the guitar or their instrument. And like to put across them, you know, it's because they practice and it's because they put in their time. And when they can kind of see the promise, they're willing to pay the price of practice. Find new sources of music, I brought up there. My lessons will be directed a lot with songs. Like a student may come into me and go, hey, I'm into this band. And I'll be like, great. And I'll have a listen and I'll pick a song that I know will stretch them. But for example, if someone comes in and they're into AC/DC, I love AC/DC, but after a while, they're going to become absolute professionals at their power chords, their rock playing. But maybe one classical piece might open up a whole new door to them. So finding new sources of music. We're blessed nowadays with the likes of YouTube and the likes of Spotify and like the internet. There's any amount of things out there you can find new sources on. And just try things. It can be a really good bond, I find, if like a parent introduces their child to some music they were into growing up or that they like, and can be good listening exercise for parent and child. This particular strategy I read about 2 weeks ago. It's brilliant. It can be used for anything, but I think it's a fun one for kids. The paperclip strategy. Now, what is the paperclip strategy? The paperclip strategy is basically for every day of practice they do in a row, you get a paperclip and you attach it onto the next one. So you begin forming a chain. So after 5 days, they'd have 5 paper clips and perhaps see how long they can make it. That works pretty well. One child came into me last week and said they began doing it, which was great to hear. And it worked for them. They said they did 5 days. And they knew everything they needed to know. Other systems, like I said, keeping score. You could have the X's on the calendar. You could also, I saw one person one time had we'd say a 30-day practice challenge. And like 30 days, so if you got like some of the pound shops or the Euro stores, they sell medals. And you could have maybe a gold medal if they reach the 30 days, a silver if they reach the 20-day mark, bronze if they reach the 10-day mark. That can work really well. The other one is, there was one more, it'll come back to me. I'll move on in the meantime. Find other outlets to play in. Like exposing them to as much music as possible. Other outlets could be like bring them around to a friend's house who plays. That in alone can encourage them to show up and have practice done and want to progress like their friend is. And it can be a fun journey for both of them. Other outlets could be in schools. So, like, for example, it's always a good idea, like, if your child, we'd say if they start school and then they take up guitar or whatever instrument after a while, sometimes the teachers might know unless the child says it to them. So I'd always encourage, if a child takes up an instrument, say it to the teacher, and at least then they know. And they could end up playing it more in school or in school concerts. And again, it's about more exposure. Treats. Okay. Basically, chocolate or some other certain type of reward. It doesn't have to be chocolate. But like one thing that could be good is you could perhaps encourage them to play you a gig. And I'll talk more about that in a while. But encourage them to play in front of you in the house and treat it like a gig. And maybe for every few gigs or something, put a few coins or whatever you decide the amount yourself, but put it into a jar. And it's like gig money to them then. And again, they'll see it build up the more practice they do. And you are giving them money, and it is adding to the value you get out of your lessons if they're doing more practice. So I think that's a good one. Would love to have some gigs when I was 8 or 9. Okay, factors that can affect motivation. How busy specific days are for a child or a parent. Like, you can be motivated, but time is time, and we only have so much of it. So I look at what your busiest days are, and I try and plan around that. Like I said earlier, the windows of time in the morning can be invaluable. Environment. Just take a moment and picture 2 different scenarios. So we'd say one child goes home and they practice, and they have a practice space set up. Now, you don't need to have a music room, but if you have a room in the house where they can go, and that is where they practice, that's where that area of the house is associated with. That's what that area is associated with. Like even a corner of a room, maybe you have a photo or 2 of their favorite bands up on the wall. That's one scenario. The other could be that they go down, they watch TV, and they bring guitar with them. And if the TV is going in the background, or if maybe they have little brothers and sisters, and if they're running up to them, ask them what they're up to or what they're playing. Save that maybe for the gig they'll play in the house. But it's more that they'll be undisturbed and their ears are fully taken in the sound of the guitar, the sound of what they're doing, and they're fully engaged. I was saying about practicing during the ad breaks. Just to add to that, I'd practice by leaving the room and going down to this practice space. Okay, so I was saying set up a practice space. Communication. Communication is key. I think my slide just went there. 1 second. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to pull up my slides, and I was in the middle of talking about communication. I hope everybody can see my slides now. This is my first time using this software. So there's no questions. Oh, hold on. Brilliant. In the living room. And again, one thing I'd encourage, like the age we live in nowadays, you have a perfect chance to document your child's growth on an instrument. Like I have a few old video cameras at home, or old VHS tapes at home, and they're invaluable. Like I have about maybe 5 clips of myself as a kid playing pretty dodgy renditions of Wonderwall, which I'll spare everyone from seeing. So I'm just going to pull up the screen share again here now. Okay. Okay, so we were talking about communication. That's where we were. Okay, and we're back. Okay, thanks for sticking with me. Okay, communication. Communication is key, as I was saying. It's really like, I love this. I was at a Suzuki training course last year. Suzuki, if anyone's unfamiliar, it's a very parent and child orientated method of learning an instrument. And this was one of the key things I picked from it. And like that with tonight, some of this stuff, you could have already heard it. It's good to hear it again, but even if you pick one idea from this, it could be the idea that totally changes your child's playing life. So in communication, 3 positives for every 1 point out. Like when you're watching your child practice or watching them play, if there's something you can comment on that you see that you see as something they could improve on, and you can advise them on it. Or for example, their teacher, I might have said, look, they just need to watch out for this little point. For example, I'll give you a scenario now. So somebody plays, the child plays, and we'd say their G chord, their 3rd finger is on the wrong string, we'd say. Okay, so 3 positives. If you saw them play for you and they did that, you may say, oh, great, nice sound, and you're hitting all the right strings you're meant to hit. You've used the right fingers. The fingers are close to the frets. You're pressing hard. I can see that the rhythm is good. Oh, one little thing. Just perhaps see your 3rd finger. Just move that down a string and it'll sound even better. To me, that's a nice way of putting it across. There's praise and there's progress. I said the word wrong there earlier. I don't usually say the word wrong. Language, again, I'd use words like different, and I'd use improve, better. I'd always praise, but I always look for new areas to improve. Okay, challenges. There is a mountain, but it's walking. Disclaimer, I haven't drawn any of these diagrams. Can't take any credit for them. I'll stick to guitar. First challenge, the old saying, practice is boring. It hit me today when I was making some of these slides that, like, I have photos of guitarists in my room, in my teaching room. None of them are practicing. They're all up on stage, like, rocking it out in front of thousands of people. Like, there's no photos of Jimi Hendrix sitting down practicing. There's no photos of AC/DC at band practice. Kids usually get to see the end result, the sort of rock star life, and like everyone needed to practice. Like a point I put across to them is Like you see Jimi Hendrix soloing it up on, we'd say, YouTube, but he needed to learn his open chords the way the kids need to learn their open chords. Because sometimes they want to do the cool stuff. They want to do that, playing the guitar behind the head, when you need to be able to make a G chord before you head down that path. So practice is boring, but it's not really. They see the price, but not the payoff. Like the payoff, as I was talking earlier, it could be being able to play that song they love, being able to take part in the school concert because they can play fast enough. Instead of thinking about, oh, I'm spending my time here. Engaging with the material. Engaging with the material in terms of, like, again, like I said earlier, AC/DC, someone's into them, that's all they do. It can be tricky to get an AC/DC fan to engage with a One Direction song. Even if, like, there is valuable things to learn in every song. And that can be a challenge to say to them, well, do you know, I know you don't like this band, but they offer a lot to you. So we'll be talking more about that again. Playing songs. You could generate interest in the song, like I was saying, engagement, and by Googling facts about the song. Like, for example, some songs can come alive to a child if you tell them a story about how it was written, or who else played on it, or a funny story about the recording of it. Like Under Pressure, like with David Bowie, passed lately, unfortunately. But I was telling the kids the story of how when they wrote the bass line, apparently, it was written and they didn't write it down and they didn't record it and they went for pizza or something like that. And when they came back, they had trouble remembering how the riff went. The kids got a good laugh out of it. They spent like an hour, apparently, trying to rediscover how this famous riff went. And again, they were kind of more engaged and excited to be learning the riff then. Watch live performances on YouTube. Like I was saying, nowadays, geez, it's great what's at our disposal. Like, I've old videos at home, and you had to borrow videos, and you had to maybe get DVDs that were over maybe 30 or 40 euro to see your favorite band play. Now it's all up there for them. But it's kind of, again, getting the focus on that material. Because, of course, when you watch a YouTube video, you have ads coming at you, you have the annotations, you have the suggested videos. There's videos being suggested to you before you even watch the one you want to watch. So live performances. Listen to the song multiple times. We're doing a bit on this lately in class. Like, the analogy I use, it's like watching a movie multiple times. Like, I don't know, it's whatever muscle sort of younger kids have. I had it myself where some movies, I used to watch them day in, day out. Like Frozen, I think, is a great example to use. But the first time you watch it, you take in certain elements. Second time, you take in those elements, but maybe you pick up extra things. Third, fourth, fifth time, so on, you start seeing things in the movie or finding things funny you never found funny before. The same principles come up with songs in terms of you listen to it once, you pick up certain things. 99% of kids will listen to the words because, you know, even if you don't play an instrument, you can relate to the singing or you can relate to the words that are being sang. So, second time, maybe they listen to maybe the guitar riff that pops out. But 3 or 4 times, they begin hearing extra stuff in the background. And even if it isn't guitar that they're hearing, like they might comment on percussion or some crazy sound effect, it's all ear training. So that can really engage them with the song and make them more interested in playing it. Okay, habits. Out with the old and in with the new. Lots of players can have good habits, but then there's like other habits you may need to correct with positive reinforcement. Like, again, I was saying about using the positive language. But there are certain habits that, as the years go on, I get more experience. There are like three golden things I usually say to kids to get clear sounding chords. And I often say them in a like lesson after lesson, and even after they have it mastered on one chord, it's the same thing on the next chord. So the first one is keep the fingers as close to the frets as possible. This is a bit of advice you could give them at home. For anybody wondering what frets are, I can send on guitar fretboard diagrams to anyone who wants them. Just drop me a mail afterwards. But just to describe it briefly, it is the silver line that's on the neck of the guitar. You'll see there's about maybe 20 of them on a guitar. So when a child makes their chord shape, they need to keep their fingers close to the fret. So the fret, which one though? Is it the one back the way or up the way? It'll be the one, they'll always budge it up the way. Up the way being more towards their other hand, more towards the sound hole, the body of the guitar. That is key. Like, for example, the next two I'm going to share, you could have those next 2 points totally 100% accurate, but if your fingers aren't as close to the frets, the chord still won't come out. So double check what strings you are meant to hit. On fretboard, on chord diagrams, you may see like an X written on certain strings. That's to signal that the child isn't meant to hit those strings. There can be a massive difference in sound between an A chord with all the strings hit, or an A chord in terms of not hitting the top string, which you're not meant to do. Press as hard as you need to. What am I talking about there? Obviously, I'm talking about the fretboard hand, the one that'll be making the chord, but as you need to. Sometimes the kids might say as hard as you can, but the analogy I use with them is you'll end up like, well, first of all, you'll end up creating a lot more tension in your hands, which you don't want anyways. So it's all about just finding what's the point that you go from it not coming out to it's coming out nice and clear, but you're not like, watch out that the fingertips aren't going pure white on the hand from pressure. As I said, the analogy I use with them is, Joe, if the Incredible Hulk was playing the guitar, he'd press as hard as he needed to. If he pressed as hard as he could break it or smash it. He definitely would. But they get a laugh out of that. Okay, strumming picking hand considerations. So that was okay, I was going to say left hand. That is the fretboard hand I talked about last. Sorry, lefties. Okay, a real common one I see is hold the pick with the thumb and the index finger only. Now, I had a friend in for a lesson lately, and it was great. We're kind of discussing how come that happens, because they were doing the same thing. And one possible thing they said was that perhaps in school you write with your thumb and the two fingers around a pencil. So that could be a identifying factor why, but reasons not to do it, the reasons why you should hold the pick with just the thumb and the index is because it frees up your other three fingers to play later on. There'll be certain songs that could come up or certain techniques that require those to be free. And also, this leads me on to my second point, keeping your wrist straight as you strum. If they hold the pick with their thumb and their index in their second, it can create a sort of a curvature in the wrist that affects the flexibility and the fluidity of their strum. Again, like I said, if anybody wants diagrams or video examples, let me know. I'm going to aim to post them up on my Facebook page anyways. Just first time using a PowerPoint or Keynote in a while, so haven't that fully in sync yet. Working on it. Okay, watch out for strumming or picking too wide. What I mean by that is, as they strum, keep an eye as their hand, once it's hit the strings, the pick, it shouldn't really stray too far down past the strings. Like, it has its job done, so ideally it should return up the way again. Now, how far is too far? Really, I'd say keep an eye at the sound hole on the body of the guitar. If the pick passes that is a good indication that it's slightly gone too far. Some songs will require it, but the majority won't. Like some artists are known for their technique of doing the opposite. Okay, the compound effect. I love this thing. The compound effect basically is how making small efforts or small amounts over time, how they can add up to massive amounts. So I'm going to run you through an example here. So we'd say 20 minutes per day. It amounts to 140 minutes practice per week. Immediately, like if you said to a child in a lesson, or like if I said it to them, I said, oh, you have to do 140 minutes this week. That can seem massive. So I'd break it down. I'd say, 20 minutes a day. That's per week. That adds up to 602 minutes per month. And wait for it then. In a year, your child would have 7,300 minutes practiced. And that's over 121 and a half hours in the year. I'd never say to a child in a lesson, do you know what? I think you should do 121 and a half hours of practice this year. I probably wouldn't see them the next week. So that's why I'd break it down. Okay. And again, to me, that'd be practice. Like, I wouldn't put a cap on the amount of playing they should do. Like, I'd never say only do 20 minutes, Joan. Stop then. Have your minute time, have your practice minutes, and then have the reward of let them play Smoke on the Water, let them play whatever they want. And it can be a good warm down or cool down exercise as well then. Okay, practice in the digital age. I've mentioned a few times how nowadays, of course, spending too much time in digital mediums can take away from practice, but as with any tool, the digital devices, if used properly, they can be excellent resources for kids. Okay, apps and resources. I see lots of icons there now. I don't see any guitar ones. Guitar-related apps. Okay, so these ones, if you just do a quick search, I've looked up the official name of each of them on the, we'd say the Apple App Store, but they should be listed the same in both. Guitar Tuna. Guitar Tuna I found a couple of months ago. It's an excellent, excellent app. It's free to begin with, and then after a while you can pay for the upgrades if you wish to do so. But what it gives for free is, first of all, as the name implies, it's a tuner. It can help tune the guitar. The interface in it, the way it looks, it's brilliant. It's really, really easy for a child to understand, because I've tried a few different apps and lessons, and that was the number one for engagement. It looks fun. They learn to use it quicker than other apps. So there's a tuner on it. There are some games, some really cool little guitar games. Like, for example, there's one for changing chords, and really good incentives to get them to the next level, like in terms of if they get their G to C chord, they get 1 point, and a scoreboard starts being kept. And of course, they're going to try and beat themselves. So there's a lot of great stuff in that app. I think they added ukulele chords lately as well. I saw the update. Okay, ClearTune. While Guitar Tuna is a brilliant app, ClearTune, as the name suggests, it's a tuner. I found it to be just a tad more accurate. It's not as fun looking, but they'll be more in tune. It's trickier to read, but the end result is a bit better. The Steinway metronome. Now, if you look up metronomes on the App Store, you're going to find everything. You'll find every type of metronome. I entered Steinway just because that's the one I use. You can pick whichever ones you like. The principles are the same on all of them. The metronome is a tool that every song or every piece can be measured in, we'd say, in beats per minute. And if we'd say in communicating with their teacher or with me, if you come to me, like I could say, for example, well, do you know what? This song is 80 BPM. That is the target. At the minute, they're at 50 BPM. So maybe we'll aim to get up to 60 by the end of this week. And as I said earlier, the numeric representation it's invaluable. they're on a journey, they can see progress. Because again, if they're not playing at the speed of the song yet, how fast are they really going? That, like, this number can mean a lot to them. Like, I've seen kids aim to get from, we'd say if they're at 50, they're meant to be at 80. Next thing, they're aiming to get from 73 to 74 or 75. And the focus and determination, it really comes out with that app. Pomodoro time. This is one I use myself in my day-to-day life. Pomodoro is basically, it's an app that, how would you say, if you're looking to do focused chunks of work. So, for example, if I'm working here, I could have a task to do. And next thing, you get an email, Viber, WhatsApp, you name it nowadays. You message the person back. Before you know it, you're an hour there and you don't know what you've done. Pomodoro is a 25-minute quantity of time. Now, this app here, Pomodoro Time, the reason I suggest this one, it's very easy to use, it's free, and you can change the time quantity of your Pomodoro. So you set a timer going. So you set your Pomodoro to 10 minutes, and you say to your child, right, so we'll start. You hit it. For 10 minutes, they focus on it, and the countdown will continue. And then what that allows you to do is they know they can go off and do whatever they like after that 10 minutes, but it kind of keeps them there. Rather than playing 2 minutes of guitar, next thing they watch a bit of something, someone laughed at something maybe in a movie, and they tune into that for a minute. Kind of keeps things in line. Also, that app, it has a graph that shows you how many Pomodoros you do per day, or what days you've done your Pomodoros on, and a visual representation. It really helps. So that's free. The Steinway metronome is free. The clear tune, I meant to say, I think it's around €2 something. It was anyways a while back, which in the world of apps, as I say, seems like €1,000, but it's worth it. Ultimate Guitar Tabs, I think that's €5, but a great resource. If you check out ultimateguitar.com, I'd always encourage the kids to look at extra stuff outside of lessons as well. Because, you know, someone could be going to a guitar teacher for the rest of their life and they might never learn all the stuff, the songs they're after. So kind of them going off themselves looking stuff up can work really well, because they have to do a lot more thinking and a lot more figuring out than we'd say their teacher just saying, oh yeah, this is what that does here. And the thinking has gone out of it at times. Okay, I like this one. Finding a playing buddy. There are 3 types of players really out there. And all these players are types of players that are great to surround your child with. The first type is those players with slightly less experience. Now, why is this a good thing? I've had some kids come into me in lessons and they're on such a great buzz. They're after telling me how they were a teacher for a few minutes in school and they showed their mate who's only playing maybe, we'd say, a week or two, they showed them something. And them having to think on how to show something to another child, that improves them as a player. Like when you can teach something, it can go into your head a lot better than just applying it yourself first. So I'd find, you know, look around. Who knows, you could have a mate who is a child who hasn't been playing as long. Set up a play date and let them come over. And who knows, your child could pick up something off them too, or the way they explain it, they might think differently about it. So that's one. Those with the same experience. A band could be a good example, or a duo, 2-piece. Like, then they could play the same songs together and they'd bounce ideas off each other. And finally, those with more experience. Those kids who have things to show your kid. And that can be a great bond as well, like, you know, just someone being a sort of a mentor or a tutor to another kid as a mate as well. So those are the 3. Okay, so now you found, we'd say, your child a playing buddy. Performance opportunities. Like I said earlier about the exams, the exams coming up, or a performance coming up, they're two high motivator factors for a child. Performance opportunities. Okay. We have home gigs. Like, a gig doesn't have to be a massive Guns N' Roses style, 20 amps in the background, playing to 100 people. To me, a gig can be a child coming around and taking out their guitar, and even if they know one chord, they're getting up and they're playing for somebody, and that is key. That is so important in my eyes. So like, set up a night, maybe have one gig night a week where you say, look, we'll turn the sitting room into a mini venue and put around the chairs, maybe invite like uncle, aunts, granny, granddads over, neighbors, even pets like music, whoever. So, and encourage them, you know, just get them going. And like I was saying, play for, like, it doesn't have to be a set out night then. Like, for example, if a relative calls around, if they're home visiting from another country, maybe have an impromptu performance. That can be good too, because it can be good experience for a child if, how do you say, not to always be prepared. Like if they're home and you say to them, here, do you want to play a song for whoever? That kind of, they mightn't even have a chance to get nervous if they do get nervous. But I found the more times they play, the less nervous they get. And also, like I'd say to the kids I teach, I'd always encourage them to do at least one concert. And if they turn around to me and they say they didn't enjoy it, I won't push them to do another one. But it's never happened, thankfully, touch wood. They've always come to me afterwards buzzing, and they're like, they're wondering when the next one is, and I'm still recovering. So, school concerts and events. Like I said earlier, it's all about looking at like, just maybe even sending a note to say, look, they're playing guitar now, just to keep it in mind if there is a concert coming up, and so you know they've started playing a new instrument. Communions, confirmations, I've seen a lot of kids make extra progress with the extra exposure to playing they've had in school. Those types of events. Skype gigs. I've never played a Skype gig for anyone, but it came to me today. Like, friends, relatives abroad, set up a connection and have them play a song for them. And that can be good too. Like, their audience isn't directly in front of them, but they still feel like somebody is watching and acknowledging them. And that is it. So I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Bit of a teething problem there with the monitor hooking out, but I hope everything works smoothly for everyone. The last thing I want to just ask, is there any questions? I'll take off the slide and put it back on webcam in a moment. But again, I'd love to hear your feedback. I'd love an email even. I love, how do you say, I love hearing on where I could improve or what you found beneficial. Even what you're thinking, well, maybe that isn't too beneficial for what I need. Facebook, if you could look me up, and this should go, how do you say, this should go up on YouTube Live. So please share it with anybody you think that may find this information beneficial. And I'll take this off now. Okay, and we're back on. Right, so anyone have any questions or anything they want to ask in the chat box? If you don't, it's cool. And you have my email if you have anything. But I'd like to thank everyone for watching. I'll be doing a few more webinars as time goes by. And if there's any topics you'd like to see discovered, please let me know. And I'll be announcing some upcoming workshops soon as well. And some other types of events like that on my website. So keep an eye on the Facebook. Keep tuned. Keep playing. Keep encouraging the kids along. That's what it's all about. And my last point, I meant to put this in the slide, but like, music is such a wonderful gift for a child to have. Some of the best friends I've ever made has been through music. and it's been through, like, I've shown up to something, maybe not knowing anyone, and all of a sudden then you get to know someone, you bond over, we'd say Love and Guns N' Roses, whatever band. I've mentioned them a lot tonight. I like Guns N' Roses, but I like other bands. But yeah, that bonding, like friends I have to this day, it was all through learning, even the violin and the guitar. Okay, so anyways, keep encouraging them. That's what it's all about. And one single change can make a big difference, big time. I 100% agree with that. It's a one thing, and think of the compound effect, the way it all adds up. So, thanks so much for watching. Take care. Have a good night.